Said President Biden meeting with China's president tomorrow. A big topic will be Ukraine. Russia is asking for military and economic help from Beijing. Secretary of State Antony Blinken saying today that Xi, who has said he might be willing to help Vladimir Putin, is playing both sides.
We believe China in particular has a responsibility to use its influence with President Putin and to defend the international rules and principles that it professes to support. Instead, it appears that China is moving in the opposite direction by refusing to condemn this aggression while seeking to portray itself as a neutral arbiter.
So President Biden has met or spoken to Putin and Xi several times, and yet Putin waged the war in Ukraine, threatened to use nukes, and all with China's tacit support for Russia. So, are we in this situation now in spite of these meetings or because of them? NewsNation senior contributor George Will joins us now. George, why does it seem our adversaries have no fear right now? Does it reflect the Biden foreign policy in your view?
I think our adversaries are more cautious than they would be if they didn't have some fear of the United States. I think what Mr. Biden will try to tell President Xi is a general point and a particular point. The general point is that the United States has enough mental bandwidth within its government to pay attention and have other resources to deal with Asia and Europe at the same time. The particular point would be this. It's very important that President Xi not infer from the fact that the United States is not directly giving military support to Ukraine, that it would therefore not directly give military support to Taiwan. Two very different problems with two very different histories and very different U.S. commitments.
Well, President Biden, he's repeatedly said when it comes to Ukraine that more American military involvement means World War III. But let me ask you this. Does staying out of the fight make that possibility of a wider conflict more likely?
I think we're not quite out of the fight. We're certainly not in it directly.
Yeah.
We're in the fight in a proxy way through third parties. But the amount of aid that is poured into Ukraine and the kind of aid, the Javelin tanks that are making mincemeat of some of the Russian armor, there are Russian generals' heads are going to roll back when they get around to evaluating the miserable performance of their army. The very fact that China is asked to come to the aid of Russia against a neighbor of 44 million people and no great military tradition is an astonishing, diminishing event for Russia.
Yeah. You mentioned the proxy war and the missiles. We're sending missiles, we're sending armor, we're sending drones, we're sharing intel with the Ukrainians. Isn't the U.S. already knee-deep in this fight? Where's the line between too much and not enough help?
Well, that's the $64,000 question. There is a line. We don't know where it is, and therefore caution is warranted. But the line clearly, I think, would have been crossed if we had had a no-fly zone. We've been very clear about that. So
George,
it's something that doesn't have...
Go ahead. Go ahead, sir.
The line is something that prevents direct U.S. munitions or even direct munitions fired by Americans at Russian men or munitions.
George, you probably remember this quote. It was in Bob Gates' memoir. He's the former defense secretary. He's also the CIA director, but defense secretary during the time Joe Biden was vice president. And he said of Biden, quote, "He's been wrong on nearly every major foreign policy and national security issue over the past 4 decades. Now Joe Biden is president. Let me ask you, in your view, is he effectively leading the West's response?"
I think he is. I think Gates was right, but I think on Ukraine that the Biden-Blinken team has been right. I think they've intervened deftly. I think they have restored America's power in the sense that the rule of power is use it or lose it. And the United States is using its power to orchestrate an astonishingly united West in an astonishing flow of munitions of the sort that are lethal. Remember, we're not making this silly distinction between defensive and offensive military support. We're giving them offensive weapons to come to their defense.
Now, I just want to bring it back to China finally and very quickly. What is the Chinese game here? They have a lot at stake here. Markets in Europe, markets in the United States. They seem to be playing both sides, publicly appearing with Putin and saying the right things, but certainly they wouldn't want to put their economy at risk by openly siding with Putin and giving him what he wants.
I would be very surprised if President Xi hasn't been sobered and made cautious by the ferocity of economic sanctions that have been brought against Russia. It's much easier to sanction China because China has tentacles and connections all over the world. They would be much more vulnerable as an importing and exporting nation in a way that Russia isn't to sanctions.
Okay, thank you very much, George. Senior NewsNation contributor George Will, thank you, sir.
Thank you for watching. Click the red subscribe button below so you can get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.